Escaping the Ohio winter brought us to warmer countries in South America. We want to share some of the highlights of those journeys. A Disney-like train ride brings you into the Devil's Throat area at Iguazu Falls. There, well-planned walkways parade you around and over these magnificent cascades. The cascades and falls in northeast Argentina are simply jaw-dropping. Actually, there are 275 falls and cataracts, making Iguazu the widest set of falls on Earth. Jungle surrounds you, and you can spy jungle animals as well. These are coati scrabbling around by the walkway, while a silent iguana slips carefully through the jungle floor. These specially adapted birds cling to the sides of rock underneath the falls. We saw these boats going up close to the tumult of the falls and thought, hey, that looks like fun. So we joined one of the rides, and was it ever fun? And was it ever wet? Contrast that to the quiet drift on the upper Iguazu River. Our guide pointed out the orchids and birds and butterflies of the area as we glided silently through tunnels of jungle. The majesty of Iguazu Falls will long be a travel highlight of ours. Our favorite part of Uruguay was a 3-day visit to an estancia. We stayed in the ranch home of Pedro and Nahir. The home was basic but very comfortable. Nahir cooked us typical Uruguayan foods at all our meals, sometimes using a wood-fired stove. It was warm enough that we usually ate out in the patio. Being a working ranch meant Pedro also did the milking. Frederico handled chores with the sheep. Here, shearing off face fleece. In addition to sheep, the ranch has cattle and horses. Specific horses were brought around for us to ride. We made 2 rides daily, in the early morning and late afternoon when the heat was less. Often Pedro would stop and show us something, like this baby armadillo. Following Pedro's example, we became the estancia's apprentice gauchos. Siestas after lunch are standard everywhere in South America. We would relax in the garden and read or nap and watch the beautiful birds until it was time for the next ride, or sadly, time to leave. Buenos Aires is a really big city with lots of traffic and modern buildings. The modern part of the city competes with the colonial remnants of the city's past. Of course, there is a dominant cathedral, highly ornate exteriorly and inside as well. There are brilliant stained glass windows. The National Graveyard is a rabbit warren of marble crypts and shrines to the notable personages buried there, including Evita Perón. Salta was one of our favorite places, much of which had to do with the very friendly hostel where we stayed. It was Christmas by the time we were in Salta, and a grand party with full Argentinian barbecue was laid on by the hostel for all of us. We preferred staying in hostels on our travels, not only for the price, but for the friendly company and the variety of interesting travelers we would meet. The nearby area is very desert-like, reminding us of our own U.S. desert areas, except here they have llamas as well as plenty of red rock canyons to explore. Salta's Plaza Central is ringed with a variety of interesting old municipal buildings, a fabulous museum, and of course a cathedral, which was one of the most beautiful we saw in Argentina.
Estos sagrados misterios, reconozcamos nuestros pecados.
Outside, the school children were practicing for the upcoming processions and festivals of New Year's. Nearby, Purmamarca continues with painted desert scenery. The focus of this little town is a great artisan market held in the square. The abundance of brightly colored local goods makes Purmamarca probably the most overly touristic spot in the area, but charming nevertheless. We had booked a voyage to Antarctica for the first part of 2013. This necessitated some long flights over the Andes Mountains to get to the bottom of Argentina and join our ship in Ushuaia. Our visit to the seventh continent was an adventurous blend of ice and penguins, of whales and seals. The awe-inspiring, spectacular scenery will forever be etched in our memories. We took another voyage via the Navamag ferry system in southern Chile. We traveled through the Patagonian channels, which provided an outstanding variety of scenery along the way. Four days later, we ended up in Puerto Montt, where the markets and restaurants were overflowing with excellent seafood, especially the tasty fresh mussels. Puerto Varas was dominated by Lake Lancahue and Mount Osorno. A trip across the lake to a national park showed us more Andean peaks, which were still cloaked with snow caps even at the height of the summer weather. The lodge was typical of the German settlers' influence on local architecture. Busing northward, it was interesting to see the miles and miles of tobacco fields alongside the road. Our bus terminal was right beside the terrific wet market in Valparaiso. There was a great variety of super produce and fruit, and again, good restaurants with local seafood. Valparaiso is a split-level city with the business area and port framing the upper levels of housing. The hills are reached by a variety of funiculars, all quite old and frankly a little scary to ride. The buildings at the top were crowded together and only narrow alleyways instead of streets. Varieties of interesting and very artistic graffiti dominated these pathways. The capital city of Chile is Santiago, again crowded with the old and with new. The cathedral, dating from completion in 1800, is quite beautiful, and we lucked out by hearing a recital on the pipe organ that is featured there. Is this God's halo? We took a wine tour at the Concha y Toro estate, the second largest producer of wine in the world. Token vineyards planted around the grounds showed us the different types of grapes used in production. It is most famous for its Castillero de Diablo wine. The devil does live in this cellar, along with casks of modern production, which we, of course, were obliged to taste. delicious. The central Plaza de Armas hums with activity throughout the day. While the nearby market displays Chile's outstanding summer fruits. Returning to Argentina, we stopped in Mendoza at another favorite hostel. There we joined some fellow travelers for another wine tour, but this time we did our tour by bicycle. Once we got the gear set up, we were off on the road to a small, family-owned and operated vineyard. The owner happened to be there to be our guide and to pour samplings of his excellent wine. The second winery featured huge antique casks housed in centuries-old cellars. And again, a good selection of tastings was on hand. Our next stop was at a more modern facility. The tour of the vineyards and winery was followed by an excellent lunch. At our last stop, I fell off my bike. And no, it was not too much wine. Our favorite nighttime entertainment was in Salta at a local peña named La Casona de Molina. We had dinner, Rodrigo came into play, and was then casually joined by other musicians. It was very traditional, very folkloric, with many of the customers joining in on the songs. We had returned to Salta to experience the Latin time of Carnival. A day trip to Purmamarca started the celebrations off at a more local level, very limited on costumes and performers, but not on the snow spray, which was a taste of things to come. The traditional parade, called corsos, begin around midnight. The multitude of dance groups were energetic, elegant, and colorful. There were the most fantastic and amazing costumes on parade. Sadly, our energy levels couldn't compete, and we retired to the hostel after about 3 hours. We know that the corsos continue until well after dawn. Visiting Argentina, Chile, and Uruguay proved to be an excellent travel choice with an abundance of remarkable memories for us.